Hi everyone, I'm Sophie Milburn, editor of the MSP Channel Insights portfolio, and I'm joined here with Dean and Adam from Softcat. And before we dive into kind of the findings of the report and everything, would you like to both introduce yourselves and your roles at Softcat?
So my name's Dean Gardner, technology director. I look after something called the tech group at Softcat. We have a tech and services division, and the tech group is the front end of that, if you will. OCTO, where Adam sits, and a couple other functions or teams, advisory, architecture, and service development, all sit in the tech group, and I look after all of that.
Oh.
Tough job. Yeah, and I'm Adam Harding, so I am the head of OCTO, which stands for the Office of the CTO. It's a group of industry luminaries, I suppose, deep technical geeks, whose job is really to empower people to make better technology choices. That's about it.
Love that. Sounds great. So you've just released Softcat's business tech report based on insights from kind of thousands of organizations. What are the key findings that stand out to you, and what do they tell us about the priorities businesses are setting for 2026?
So I think the first thing that jumps off the page for me is how tightly focused people are on a lot of the basics around things like cost control and things like maximizing the impact of what they already own, whilst at the same time trying to juggle the ball and introduce safe and useful innovation through AI, whether it's for their colleagues or for their customers. So there's a bit of they're a bit at odds with each other, I think. But the pressure is coming from the leadership teams and from the customers and the patients and the students or whoever it is you're serving to balance both those things. Great value innovation that makes a real difference to people's lives, but without costing the earth. And I suppose we'll come on to that later as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some common themes, as Adam said, and there's a lot of consistency with what we've seen over the last 10 years, but there's those add-ons that we're seeing, the pressure of AI and what that means. And I know we'll talk about that a bit later. The data aspect of where people's data resides and all the elements that go with that. So there's bits that kind of layer into the platforms that have existed for many, many years. Cloud's not a new thing anymore, and on-premises data centers have been around for many, many years. But the complexity and, as Adam said, that sprawl of technology, how do you manage cost control? How do you manage the data sovereignty? And when you look at that new area of AI that everybody's sort of clamoring to understand, where does that layer on top of all of that stuff as well? But networking, security, those things haven't really changed. They've evolved a lot over the last 2 years to try and accommodate this speed of change. But fundamentally, the foundations of technology, I don't think have changed that much. So there's a lot of stuff in there that almost repeats a lot of the past, but with this new layer of technology that sits on it, that everybody's trying to understand what's relevant and what's not. And that's why we exist to a point. We have to try and navigate all of that. So that insight coming in from our customers and us having to navigate that on their behalf is really what our role is.
Perfect. Great answers from both. Thank you. The report highlights that 47% of organizations are prioritizing data security. What do you think is driving this heightened focus, especially with increasingly hybrid and complex estates?
I think the fixation with data security is because it's a hybrid world, part on-premise, part cloud, part SaaS, and your data is the lifeblood of all of those systems, and more importantly, the outputs of all of those systems. And if you don't know where it lives, what shape it's in, who can see it, who can change it, then everything from your day-to-day operations through to your most exciting new projects are actually open to fraud. They're open to abuse. They're open to attack. And it's so important to balance what you'd like to do with what you need to do.
Many years ago, I worked with I won't mention who it is, but a sports body, an organization that was getting ready for the 2012 Olympics. So to do with the British Olympic team. And I worked for the company that looked after a lot of their stuff. And what was interesting was there was some probing of our platforms back then from, I I would say, state-sponsored, if you're not attacks, but basically trying to get access to the data, the training data for specifically, and I remember this, it was rowing, cycling, these specific sports where they held the training regimes for the athletes and the teams within the databases on these platforms. And that was around 2010. So all that data, and that data that was so important to be, have a competitive edge, back then was trying to get accessed by other parties. I don't think it's changed. I just think the value of the data now, in that sense, had a value to someone else to try and access, because we had a competitive advantage within this country, within that Olympics for those particular sports. And I think that's fascinating. I just think that data aspect across the globalization and organizations that are competing is crucial. If that's state sponsored or if that's across nations, but equally across businesses, people are interested in other people's information and data for whatever reason and whatever means. And I just don't think that's ever not been an issue. I just think it's become more acute. The platforms of which you're putting it on, you're opening it up to the hyperscalers, the cloud platforms. You're putting it in other places where there's, in some cases, shared responsibility models where you're relying on other people also to look after that stuff. Now, if that data is important to you, and you don't want someone to have it, then you need to put a huge emphasis on how you secure that data. But it's not a new problem. It's just become so much more widespread. So the question of the value of data, well, there's a value somewhere to someone or somebody. And if it's valuable to you, you don't want to share it. You need to do something to secure it. And I just think that's what we're getting into. It's that understanding of what your information is and what you want to share and what you don't want to share. And that can get quite confusing if you're opening up the borders of your platforms. As I say, in the past, those borders weren't very open, very closed, but now they are open. So I just think that that's becoming a bit of a challenge, I guess, or more of a challenge for organizations and individuals. But the reason why I told that story at the beginning is because data it's always been important to those that it's important to, but it's up to you how much you want to share. And I just think that has created a great area, which is creating some problems.
Data is in more locations now because of the hybrid nature of the world. The barrier to entry for the tools to try and infiltrate your systems is now much, much lower than it used to be. You can quite quickly go onto the dark web and download whatever it is you want to start your own mini attack, or whether it's state sponsored or government sponsored or it's espionage. But the barrier to entry is so much lower. And then the third point is I really think that the focus on that AI has given to innovation and has made people spend the time to try and understand the value of their own data, which means they probably now feel a little bit more paranoid about it because they understand that there is some value in the data we hold. And if other people, be it our competitors or someone else, get hold of it, then that's a problem for us. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a perfect storm, really. We understand the value of our data better. The data is spread across far more locations than it ever has been, and the barrier to entry for the baddies to go and try and collect that is much lower than it's ever been. So it's a bit of a perfect storm, isn't it?
And it is so easy to see it as a new problem because it has changed so much. But like you said, it's been around for a really long time. So yeah, it's very interesting to see.
It's just a bigger problem, isn't it? That's what it is. It's a bigger problem. All those factors. There's more value because we now realise the value in it. There's more data. It's in more situations than it's positions and places it's ever been, and the barrier to entry to get at that data is lower than it's ever been. So yeah, perfect storm, really.
It's a willingness to share it. We've got a generation of people growing up that's online, quite willing to share openly, and so coming into the business world and being employed, the guardrails in place for you to be able to share is has to be managed. It has to be controlled, and I just think it's that grey area of what you're willing to give out, and certainly from an organizational business perspective, it's your business is your business, and whether we like it or not, we can share in the communities of the industries that they work in, but fundamentally, in most cases, certainly in the corporate space, because you've clicked a button that says I'm okay with it. Yeah, so it's that kind of it's in our everyday lives. We're just clicking a button to say I'm fine with you collecting that information, but harvesting that information and using that from a monetary purpose is certainly the world we're in, and I don't think it's really hard to control and govern that.
Yeah. Yes, similar question, kind of leading on from that, would be with loads of organizations prioritizing AI, the report shows that many are still struggling to embed it into their kind of everyday workflows. From Softcat's perspective, what are the main kind of barriers with AI, and what does successful AI enablement look like in practice today?
Well, like you say, 46% flag AI as a priority, but work is still just full of manual processes and dusty spreadsheets. And the barriers are practical, they are cultural, they are innately human. I mean, the practical ones are things like dirty data, legacy silos of where it's stored. The cultural ones are, I think, people struggling to trust machines. Um, and then from the human point of view, there's the skills gap, and there's many other things, but those are the core ones that you hear time and time again when you're working with people on this stuff. And successful AI today isn't a magic bullet. It's more like a series of small wins. Automate that repetitive workflow. Give the salespeople the data on tap, and stitching the tools together within some guardrails so that you're safe to do it. On the whole, the moonshot projects have fallen a bit flat. But the tech providers have invested really heavily in AI, in capabilities, in the products that you already use and you already own. So the success, at least for now, probably looks more like refocusing on the practical daily use of AI in the tools you already own, in the workflows you already have. I don't doubt that we will move forward in the not too distant future and start to really reimagine the workflows. But at the time being, what I personally have seen over the last 18 months, 2 years, is there's very few companies that have really revolutionized the flow of work to take full advantage of AI or other capabilities. They're very much in the mode of keeping on doing what they're doing, but use technology to do it a little bit faster.
Yeah, I can only agree with that. I mean, it's the unknown at the moment. You know, there's a lot of rhetoric and messaging around AI, but I think defining what it is crucial, and it can mean many things. But I do think, as Adam said, I think we're seeing it already being embedded into a lot of software, a lot of technologies that you're just using. And I think that will just continue to evolve on the things that organizations use to do their security or look after their networks. The things will just get embedded through software updates, where suddenly those elements will when they already are being embedded in. So it just gives you more context and value to be able to make decisions. But equally, those decisions going forward can then start being made on your behalf once it starts collecting that telemetry and learning more.
Bro, great answers, thank you. Agentic AI is reshaping workflows. How are organizations kind of balancing automation with empowering people rather than replacing them? And what role do data foundations and governance play in this shift?
I feel like if last year's question was, can my chatbot write a paragraph on a fancy topic, then this year's question is a little bit more like, what happens if the chatbot has its own to-do list? Agentic AI can call on other AI, it can run multi-stage tasks, it can negotiate between models, and it's an absolute head turner. But the human side to that story hasn't changed. Design it so the agent does the legwork whilst the humans use their experience, their self-awareness, and I suppose their emotional intelligence to steer. And then to the second part of your question, without good quality, trustworthy data and a foundation of practical and ethical GRC, governance, risk and compliance, to keep it that way, you wouldn't want that output to represent you, which renders it pretty pointless. So yeah, I think agentic AI is a real step forward. I think I'm not sure they were let down, maybe they were misguided. I believe their expectations for generative AI were possibly a little too high to start with. I think they were expecting it to then go and do the thing, do the automated task, take the actual action. And that's what we're getting with agentic AI. It has agency.
I think we've got a challenge. We're expecting users to just create these efficiencies, and when we're looking at agents and agent to agent communications and creating that efficiency, as you mentioned, there's a lot of slideware promises that we see. But it's like anything, it's an architecture model where you have to understand the flows. And certainly, that means potentially sitting down with individuals and teams within businesses to understand those flows, how this team talks to that team, talks to that team to create these flows of operations. I think we've got some challenges there. Sitting down with individuals whereby you're going to create efficiency in their role, suddenly, down the road, then it takes away a lot of the role. And so I think there's a skepticism that comes with it. But equally, there is an activity that has to happen across organizations, which is different because you're basically going in and understanding people's jobs. That's quite unique. When people start doing that proactively, questions naturally get asked. And I think we've got that strange dynamic that we'll see. And I think we'll see it this year, agent to agent workflows and having the orchestration of those things. We're seeing that it's happening. It exists.
Okay. How are organizations integrating business continuity, disaster recovery, and cyber resilience as a baseline for ransomware readiness? And what gaps are most common?
I think we have to assume that we will be breached, or actually, we have to assume that we've already been breached. But it's not so much the attack itself, but the disjointed approach to recovery that hurts you. And I think the report itself makes the case for weaving business continuity, disaster recovery, and cyber resilience into kind of one narrative, one plan, one motion. And again, to what Dean said earlier, this is really old school stuff revisited. Map where your critical data lives, secure it, test the recovery, automate the orchestration, and actually run tabletop exercises to get ready, because it is too late to practice once the game starts. But if you're ready and you're joined up, ransomware is a bad day in the office, not a career limiting moment.
Yeah, we saw it last year. Recovery is the important point. Are you set up to recover effectively? Because if you're a brand and you're an important brand, there's no doubt you're already being targeted. So how are you built to recover? Those tabletops are really important exercises, and certainly something that we encourage. And certainly we call out that resiliency or being resilient to recover is crucial, and certainly that's, I think, the point we made and will continue to make. You're not going to get breached. Certainly, if you're a big brand, someone's going to try. But how do you mitigate against that and be proactive to recover? So just agree with that completely.
Well, thank you. Okay, with 75% of organizations developing or having IT sustainability strategies and strong interest in buyback, trade-in, and refurbishment, how is sustainability shaping technology decisions and cost efficiency initiatives?
Well, I suppose sustainability and cost efficiency are kind of two sides of the same coin. And as you say, 75% of organizations have an IT sustainability strategy, and it is showing up. It's showing up in extended refresh cycles, in buyback programs, and we're being asked more and more for energy efficient designs, not just the cheapest thing that will do the job. And it's not virtue signaling. It's good business, especially now as parts and components are in short supply and are suffering fairly significant price shock. Refurbished kit saves money. Efficient clouds cut your electricity bill and your carbon bill. And the people that you want to recruit and the people you want to sell to are expecting you to care.
My final question is, looking ahead into the rest of 2026, what emerging trends or challenges do you anticipate will have the biggest impact on how organizations approach technology, and how is Softcat prepared to help businesses navigate these priorities?
If 2025, and to be honest, 2024 was about experimentation, for me, 2026 will be more about enablement and maturing. AI won't just be a pilot project. It'll be embedded in workflows from finance to frontline operations. Agentic AI will reshape cybersecurity and compliance, forcing us to really rethink identity and access and trust models. Regulations will tighten. We can expect to see the Cyber Resilience Act and the EU AI Act move from boardroom conversations to actual kind of operational mandates. Hybrid platforms are going to become the default architecture, blending on-prem, hyperscaler, and now neo cloud, all with unified governance. That's a really important piece. Sustainability is going to shift from being an aspiration to at least a soft KPI and in the future a hard KPI. And that's going to influence your procurement teams and even your design decisions. So sustainability is not just the remit of procurement. We need to design things to be sustainable. I don't think you then get the human questions that are going to continue to dominate. How do we reskill for jobs that don't exist yet? How do we kind of lead with empathy at scale when we're trying to introduce technology that, as Dean's mentioned previously, really will, whether it's a small amount or a big amount, affect everybody? And how do we build cultures that are going to thrive when automation takes the grind out of the work? It might be great, might not be so great.
My only add is you can't ignore the global political landscape as well. We're already seeing that impact supply chain. So there's all the stuff that's BAU that we've taken in from last year, and to the points that Adam's just made, everything's impacted by supply chain shortages, decisions that are made, tariffs that are implemented, cost challenges, all those things that you can't control but are happening around us. So it's just navigating that as well. And I think we're going to have to manage that fluid, let's call it, way of which we're all working and living in. So it's just how do we help? And those are the sort of things that are not technically revolutionary, and but they're things you have to consider as any organization would, and not something you'd put in a tech report. Well, you would, but it's one of those things where it's difficult because it's changing every week at the moment. So we're trying to navigate ourselves what that means on behalf of our customers. Certainly when a lot of the vendors we work with, a lot of the technology we work with come out of the US. And so that landscape, that geopolitical landscape is really interesting, and just trying to keep ahead of it is challenging, as everybody is finding.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
No worries, Sophie.
No problems at all. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you both.
And
Bye.
You too. Bye now.